Good morning, everyone. My name is Cristina Lazcano, and I can't move very much with this. All right, there's a lot of wires here. I'm a newly appointed assistant professor at LAWR in UC Davis. And today, today I'm going to be talking about sustainable soil management strategies and how they can support soil health. So I'm not going to be talking about irrigation. You're not going to learn about irrigation with my talk. But I'm going to show you how soil health and soil management is connected with soil physical properties and also water holding capacity, and therefore how that could affect irrigation management. So if you work in California, an agricultural industry, no matter what type of crop you're growing, you probably heard of soil health many times before, right? Yeah? And you're probably familiar, too, with the Healthy Soils program of the CDFA. Are you? How many people has heard of this program before? Is anybody here implementing any? Do you have any of these grants? Or? All right. Okay. So the Healthy Soils programs is administered by the CDFA, the California Department of Food and Agriculture, and it's basically supporting farmers. All right. So the purpose of this is supporting farmers to incorporate the sustainable soil management strategies with the objective of, on one hand, enhancing soil health by improving soil organic matter, and on the other hand, reducing environmental impacts of agriculture management and soil management, mostly greenhouse gas emissions, and also increasing carbon sequestration. So this program overall has so far supported 112 projects through the state of California. 33 counties have received grants through this program. It's supposed to have reduced emissions from soils equivalent to 4,000 cars at the state level. And so far, there has been $6.1 million awarded, and 15 more are coming for this next call for this 2018-2019. Okay. So there's a lot of interest in soil health lately, but what does it really mean, soil health? Soil health, this is a definition that was made by the NRCS. It's defined as the continued capacity of soils to function as vital living ecosystems that support soils, humans, and plant growth. Well, this is a really big definition, kind of broad. What it really means is that a healthy soil, is this interfering? A healthy soil is a soil that functions and that provides services, all of those services that soils are supposed to provide. And what are those? Well, soils are supposed to support plant growth. That's the main interest for agricultural systems. But also, soils need to recycle nutrients. They're also habitat for soil organisms, and those soil organisms are involved in providing nutrients for our crops, sequestering carbon as well, and holding water. Okay. How then can we promote all of these services? How can we support soil health? There's three main principles as well, which are increasing soil organic matter, reducing disturbance to the soils, and increasing diversity in cropping systems. So practices that are usually associated and support soil health, increasing soil organic matter can be done, for example, by the use of organic fertilizers like manures, compost, sewage sludge. Using cover crops will also increase soil organic matter, and using crop residues, incorporating crop residues. In terms of reducing soil disturbance, using no-till or reduced till, and managing the soil, the cover crop either through grazing or mowing instead of tillage. And in terms of diversity, what can we do? Well, using crop rotations or using, again, cover crops. Okay, but what does it mean for vineyards? Well, specifically look at vineyards, the practices that support soil health that are mostly being used right now are in terms of increasing soil organic matter, compost application. It's also one of the options for increasing soil organic matter using this type of organic fertilizer. For reducing disturbance, either reducing the intensity of tillage or using no-till, and for increasing diversity in the vineyard, the use of cover crops. That will also increase soil organic matter and reduce disturbance of the soil. Good. But what does it really mean for the crop? What does it mean? What are the benefits of these? So increasing soil organic matter, reducing disturbance of soil, improving soil health has benefits on the biological, the chemical, and the physical properties of the soil, and also has benefits for the environment. It increases carbon sequestration, and therefore it has a long-term potential for climate regulation. In terms of biological properties, how is organic matter improving biological properties of the soil? Organic matter is a food source for microorganisms, but also for the whole food web, all the rest of soil biota that lives in the soil. Soil organic matter, for example, improves soil chemical properties. It's not just a source of nutrients itself, but also it improves the cation exchange capacity of the soil, right? So the soil will also hold more nutrients if it has more organic matter. Organic matter is 50% carbon. So putting organic matter into the soil will also mean putting carbon in the soil. So you are sequestering carbon actively if you increase soil organic matter. And then finally, increasing soil organic matter and reducing disturbance of the soil has really important consequences for the physical properties of the soil, which will be directly related to water holding capacity, right? And therefore have consequences to your irrigation. Organic matter has a lower density than mineral soil. Therefore, putting organic matter or increasing soil organic matter will decrease the bulk density of your soil, okay, reduce problems of compaction. Also, it promotes aggregation. So it improves the structure of the soil. It improves the porosity of the soil, all right? Also improving infiltration and water holding capacity. Good. So overall, putting everything together, you really want to improve soil health in your system. Because what are the consequences of all of these benefits on soil, biological, chemical, and physical properties, is all of these benefits that you're getting from a healthy soil. A healthy soil will support a more diverse soil biological community. It will also be more active, so it will recycle nutrients better. It will provide more nutrients for the plants. And also, it will be better at retaining nutrients within the system. There won't be that many losses of nutrients like nitrate leaching or nitrous oxide emissions from soils. Soils that are healthy store carbon as well, and because of the improvement in soil physical properties, they will store more water, and they will reduce losses of water through leaching, and all of that will be reflected in higher yields and crop quality. So you definitely want to improve soil health in your system. And not just that. So the benefits of healthy soils are important not just for the environment. Soil has a very important role in regulating air quality, right? We all know the example of the Dust Bowl. But also our soils right now are producing really large amount of greenhouse gas emissions. So soil health will be important not just for environmental health, but because soils produce the food that we eat, they have a very important role on the quality of the food that we eat. So soil health is directly connected to environmental and human health as well. Okay, so just in case you are not convinced yet, I have to tell you that vineyard soils in particular have a great potential for improving and supporting soil health. Vineyards, because of being relatively low input and they receive low disturbance as compared to annual systems, they're perennial. They have a great potential for increasing soil carbon and therefore contributing to increased soil health. And because vineyards are essential parts of the landscape in several regions, and especially here in Napa, but also down in the Central Valley, like managing vineyard soils is important for at the ecosystem level, at the regional level. So vineyard managers, you guys are really important stewards of the environment, okay? So my goal as a scientist is to investigate what are the practices that better support soil health. What are those soil practices that are better at supporting this soil health? And so over the last 3 years, I've been working in a series of projects where we looked at different fertilizer inputs and how they are supporting this soil health with management strategies under the vine, either using herbicides or using cultivation, the use of cover crops, the use of no-till, and the use of grazing or mowing to manage cover crops. I've done this in collaboration with growers, mostly on the Central Coast, and with support with the CDFA, the Healthy Soils Program, and ARI, which is the Agricultural Research Institute from the California State University. So in this presentation, I want to show you 2 case studies that were done in the Central Coast. One of them, the first one was done in the San Luis Obispo area, in a Pinot Noir vineyard. We studied the effects of fertilizer management strategies in soil health. The second one was done in Paso Robles, and there we studied the effects of cover crop management, either through tilling or grazing, on also soil carbon and soil physical properties. So I'll start with the first trial, the fertilizer management trial. This was a study that was done by my grad student, Holly Dennison, and in collaboration with researchers at Cal Poly from the Department of Wine and Viticulture, but also Amanda Hudson at UC Davis, which is a nematologist. So here specifically, we wanted to look at fertilization strategies and the effects that they have on soil food webs. So the focus here was, out of all of these benefits that healthy soils provide, was to look at more of the biological side of the soil and how that could be related to nutrient supply and nutrient retention within vineyards. Okay, so I threw out there the word soil food web. How many of you know what the soil food web is? Yeah, you heard of it. Okay, good. So a soil food web represents like the series of ecological interactions that happen below ground between all of the different organisms that live out there, and it's basically representing what it's what. So starting with organic matter inputs from the plant and from fertilizers, then there we got either some fauna that feeds on the plants, but also microorganisms that break down the organic matter, things that eat microorganisms, and things that eat the things that eat microorganisms, okay? The importance of this is that all of these ecological interactions in the soil are regulating all of those services that we get from soils. So the turnover of nutrients from organic matter, it's supported by the food web. Carbon sequestration and decomposition, it's supported by the food web. Also, biota is extremely important in our ecosystems, our soils, to promoting aggregate formation and soil structure, right? So really studying the food web and the health of the food web is really relevant for studying soil health. So this is what the objective of this study was, okay? But as you can imagine, it's extremely complex to study the food web because there's all of these different guys there, and you really need to know how to identify them, how to extract them from soils and identify them. It's a really complex task. So because of that, people usually use indicators, bioindicators, organisms that are represented in all of the different levels of the soil food web. Is there anything there that gets your attention that is represented in all of the different trophic levels? Nematodes. They look like worms, but they're nematodes, right? So nematodes are actually very commonly used as indicators of the health of the food web below ground, okay? And you probably heard of nematodes before as pests and the parasites, right? So they've got a very bad reputation, but they're actually really important in grazing on microorganisms and therefore promoting mineralization of organic matter. They're really important in releasing nutrients and increasing the availability of nitrogen for the crops. So we can actually identify all of those different types of nematodes by looking at their mouthpieces. This is a chart that shows how the mouthpieces look depending on what they eat. So here we got the bad guys in the center. Those are the plant parasites, herbivores. They feed directly on plants. So they have these stylets here that they shoot to poke on the plant and suck the juices of the plant. But we got fungal feeders or bacterial feeders that feed directly on fungi, on bacteria. And so the mouthpieces are different and adapted to whatever they're eating. And we also have predators that eat all of the other nematodes. And we got omnivores that eat anything that they can find. So by looking at the abundance of all of these different guys, we can kind of tell the complexity and the structure of the food web and therefore the soil health, right? So nematodes are really good. They're as bioindicators of soil health. They're also sensitive to disturbance. They will change their abundance and their proportions depending on the management of the soil. They're correlated with beneficial functions, so they're really good for studying soil ecological processes. Here you have an herbivore here. That's the mouthpiece with the stylet. Okay, so this study, it was replicated, a field study that we did in Etna Valley in a Pinot Noir vineyard. And so it was actually a bigger study. We had 3 sub-trials next to each other. In one of them, we studied the cover crops, different types of cover crops, the effects on soils. Another one studied the effects of different weed management strategies, like either using herbicides or tilling under the vine. And we also had this fertilizer trial where we compared either no fertilizer applied under the vine, or we got synthetic fertilizers or organic fertilizers. Okay, we applied the treatments for 2 years, and the second year we went there, and we got samples of soil. Fertilizers were applied under the vine in June, and then we got soil samples at veraison and harvest in July and September, and here you got a little bit of the fertilizers that were applied. The no fertilizer did not get anything. Synthetic fertilizers received mostly CAN under the vine. And organic fertilizers received dairy manure or a fertilizer that is called organic farms, that is mostly poultry manure, feather meal, and rock phosphate. And as I said, fertilizers were applied under the vine. And that's where also the herbicide is applied, when the water is applied. So there's very big differences in terms of management between what's under the vine and what's in the tractor row. So because of that, we also compare the 2 locations under the assumption that the abundance of nematodes and soil health will be different in the tractor row or in the vine. So what they would see? This is showing the abundance, the total number of nematodes that we found in the soil under the vines or in the tractor row. So you see there were pretty significant differences in the numbers, total numbers of nematodes. Way more nematodes in the tractor row than in the vine row. Okay, so that was a pretty striking result. And when we looked at the types of nematodes that were there at the 2 locations, we also found pretty significant differences. So if you see here, this is the vine row. And this is the tractor row, and the proportion of either herbivores in orange, fungivores in yellow, bacterivores in green, predators and omnivores in the red colors. So you see here, the vine row not only had less nematodes overall, but the majority of the nematodes were plant parasites. That's not good. So wherever managing we're doing under the vine, it's really not supporting a healthy nematode food web. However, the tractor row, because the management is less intense, it has cover crops, it has a well-balanced proportion of nematodes, herbivores, bacterivores, and fungivores, and also higher proportions of the other higher trophic levels, the predators and the omnivores. So it's a more balanced food web, initially also more healthy. That will be a sign of a higher soil health in the rows as well, right? The rows also have higher levels of available nitrogen and available carbon. So they act as reservoirs of soil diversity, but also nutrients, carbon and nitrogen. Okay. And now you'll say, all right, but the treatments were applied under the vine. So what was the effect of the different fertilizers applied under the vine? We did see also significant differences on the nematode abundances. And here you got the abundance of herbivores and fungivores. In the no fertilizer treatment, the organic fertilizer and the synthetic fertilizer. So as you can see there, the no fertilizer and the synthetic fertilizer were relatively similar, but the organic fertilizer decreased the proportion of herbivores and increased the proportion of fungivores as compared to the other two. So the source of nutrients that you are using has an effect on the soil biology, which supports the soil health. All right? So what did we learn from here? Fertilizer management does have an effect on soil health, and by looking at nematodes, it increases the abundance of beneficial nematodes using organic fertilizers and decreases the abundances of plant parasitic nematodes. The soil under the vine also showed significantly lower amounts of nematodes, which is showing that whatever we're doing under the vine is reducing the diversity and the abundance of soil organisms. But the tractor rows seem to be good reservoirs of nutrients and good reservoirs of diversity. So focusing our management in the tractor row has a higher potential for sustaining soil health. And that kind of leads me to the second trial I want to talk about. In this case, it was focused on some other aspects of soil health. We looked at soil carbon sequestration and how that is related, and now is where I come to talk about more soil physical properties in soil water. So we looked at how soil carbon was related to water holding capacity in the soil and physical properties like porosity and bulk density, and how that was related to the yields and the quality of the grapes. Okay, so this second trial was, as I said, more focused on the management in the tractor rows by looking at how managing the cover crop in the vineyard, either through tillage or grazing, it's affecting soil health. And this is a project that it's still going on. It's a 3-year project, started last year. It's going on through the end of 2020, so we're still working on this, but I'm going to show you some of the data we got so far. And this is, again, my grad student, Jenna Marilis, is working on this, and there's several collaborations with faculty at Cal Poly as well. So this project, it's being carried out right now at a vineyard, Taulas Creek, which is a biodynamic operation. I don't know if you know what biodynamic means, but it's usually associated with really low inputs. Most of the inputs are from the farm, right? So for example, the fertilizers that they're using, it's compost that is produced from grape pomace that they produce on farm. And that's the only source of nutrients that they're using. It's applied at 5 tons per acre. They use cover crops as well as a way of protecting the soil, reducing erosion, and increasing soil carbon and nitrogen. And they're managing the cover crop. And this is a very interesting approach that I think is becoming more and more popular. They're managing the cover crop by using sheep, by using grazing. So it's kind of a side business, right? They're also selling the meat. But the sheep, the grazing is supposed to manage the cover crop and increase the fertility of the soil, right? But this is a very heavy clay soil, so they have a problem of compaction, and so they decide to till the rows as well to incorporate that organic matter, and in theory to improve soil physical properties, infiltration, but it's not really working out well, and so that's why we are doing this project over there. So we're looking at how the management, either by tilling or grazing, it's affecting total and active carbon, which is called POXC, soil nitrogen accumulation, and also the physical properties of the soil and the water holding capacity. The same as in the other project that I showed you, this is showing, here these charts are showing nitrogen, available nitrogen or nitrate, and active carbon, which is the carbon that it's more easy to break down by microorganisms, so it would support soil health a little bit more. So same as in the other project, the concentration of available nitrogen and carbon was higher in the tractor row as compared to the vine, and also higher in the upper layer of soil. Here we got the 0 to 6 inches as compared to the 6 to 12 inches. So that top layer of soil has more carbon, more nitrogen, especially in the tractor row. Okay, so we saw more carbon, more nitrogen in the tractor row and in the upper layer of soil. And this was also pretty well correlated with the physical properties of the soil, right? We said before that higher organic matter improves soil physical properties, and this is what we saw. There was a very clear correlation between active carbon, that POXC, permanganate oxidizable carbon, and porosity in the soil. So more carbon, more porosity, or more porosity, more carbon, okay? There was a really strong correlation that was stronger in the tractor row and in the upper layer of the soil, the 0 to 6 inches interval. So our hope is that this improved soil carbon and porosity would also result in higher water holding capacity in the soil. And so that was kind of the next step, looking at that. And so we took the soil samples and we did these soil moisture retention curves that you probably know how they work. Are you familiar with the soil moisture retention curves? So what we did is taking the soil samples, saturate them with water, and then as they got dry, measure the energy that takes to draw the water out of the soil. All right. So when the soil is very saturated, it takes kind of lower amount of energy to take the water out for the plant. And as the soil gets dry, then the amount of energy that you need to extract the water is higher. Okay. So this is basically what we did for the soil in the two locations, in the tractor row and in the vine. So what would you expect? If there is more organic matter in the tractor row, well, one thing I have to explain is that this difference between the energy that it takes, or the amount of water when the soil is saturated, and this, which would be the amount of water at a permanent wilting point, is what it's telling us the water holding capacity of the soil. Okay. So according to the soil carbon contents and porosity data, why would you expect the water holding capacity to be higher, the tractor row or the vine row? We say the tractor row has higher carbon. So in theory, higher carbon contents mean better soil physical properties, more water holding capacity, right? So we will expect to have more water holding capacity on the tractor row than in the vine row. But what we saw was the opposite. The vine row here hold more water when it was saturated. Permanent wilting point was similar for both of them. But the vine row had a higher water holding capacity than the tractor row, which was counterintuitive and really not what we expected. And here's kind of the average water holding capacity for the two locations at the two depth intervals. So the vines had higher water holding capacity. Now we're trying to figure out why this is happening. One reason is that we found that there is a pretty sharp increase in bulk density in the tractor row at the depth 6 to 12 inch interval, and this is probably a plow pan from the tillage, and that could be the reason why we got lower water holding capacity. Another thing we're looking at is the aggregate stability. Tillage destroys the aggregates. Aggregates are really good at holding water and balancing macro and micropores. So we are right now analyzing the soil samples to look at the aggregate stability in the tractor row as compared to the vine row. And that will kind of explain a little bit better the story. And so another thing that we decided to do is to set up a trial and an experiment to compare, to really assess the effect of tillage and grazing on these soil physical properties and irrigation. So here you see this is an aerial view of the field. So we had no-till and till rows alternating in the field, and overlaying there, we had a grazing and no grazing experiment. So these squares, this is actually an aerial picture we took with the drone. These squares that you see here are grazing plots. You see all the grass is gone, right? So we have enclosures. Well, we had the sheep grazing, whereas everything outside is not grazed, right? So we kind of like a fully factorial combination of tillage treatments and grazing treatments. So we are still working on this. We're working on the first year's data, but I do have something to show you, which is that grazing increased, no surprise here, the bulk density of the soil, which will have implications for water holding capacity and therefore, irrigation. So grazing is not really good for soil health if we look at the soil physical properties alone. All right. We looked at yields as well, and in general, we didn't find any differences between tilling and grazing in the overall yields. There was a slight difference in the number of clusters per vine. So no tilling, no grazing had a higher number of clusters per vine. I don't know what this means, but and we also looked at some of the berry chemistry. There were no differences in berry chemistry by these treatments, but it's probably also very early. It's only 1 year of these treatments, so probably need to wait until the third year to see anything. Okay, so what did we learn from here? Tractor rows, again, they store more carbon and more nitrogen, so they have a larger potential for sequestering carbon. Tillage, while it seems to increase soil porosity in the top layer of the soil, it seems to have a negative effect for holding water. And we're trying to still understand if this is associated with effects on bulk density, if there's a problem of compaction, or if it's an issue with aggregate stability. So we're working on that. All right. So moving forward, I plan to keep working on the soil health and investigating how we can improve soil health in vineyards. And I really want to know, because of the importance of vineyards in the landscape, I really think they have a great potential for ecosystem health at the larger scale as well. So I'm looking for collaborators. If you have any, if you're applying any of these sustainable soil management practices in your vineyard, if you know of anybody or anybody that has one of these healthy soils projects, I would really be interested to talk about it. So just come talk to me after this talk. Another announcement is that we are holding a field day at the same site as I just explained now, Tablas Creek in the Central Coast. So if you're going to be around June 13th, you are welcome to join us. It's a free event. And we're going to be talking about management of cover crops in vineyards, grazing versus tillage, how it affects soil physical properties, carbon, etc. Okay, so we're going to go a little bit more in depth on this trial that I just showed you. All right, and this is all for me. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Yeah.
Christina, I have a question about the soil depth that you have estimated. So in Temecula, where we grow our grapes, usually the water uptake happens at 2 feet to 3 feet. And I saw from your presentation that you basically concentrate on the first.
Yeah.
So what is the difference and why did you make that choice?
Yeah, so the choice is that I have to say, first of all, we're looking at carbon accumulation. When that happens, usually after management in the topsoil. So our objective was not so much looking at water uptake by the vines, but more look at the carbon in the soil. So that's why we chose to just look at those first 12 inches. And so our hypothesis is that improving the topsoil will also improve like infiltration and eventually uptake at a deeper part of the soil. Yeah, but it was not like the purpose of the project wasn't to look at the water uptake at that depth. Yeah. Okay.
Well, thank you, Christina.
Thank you.
Thank you.